Bro, this story is cooked. Meet Li Fan, the underground emperor. The whole country moves because he snaps his fingers. But then, two random cultivator clowns drop out of the sky, throwing fire and purple lightning like they're speedrunning the apocalypse. And in one hit, his entire city gets deleted. Family gone. Fortune gone. This man clawed his way up from poor village nobody to the top of the food chain. 50 years of grinding, wiped like a bad save file. But then, what does this goat do? Cry? Beg the heavens? Nah. He smiles. He's fucking smile. The guy stands in the middle of the apocalypse, covered in dust and trauma, and just goes, bet? Because he's got a system that rewinds time. Hits reset like it owes him money. And this time, he's got a real goal. Hunt those cultivators down. Cook every immortal wannabe alive, steal their secrets, and climb the ladder himself. To be the strongest cultivator alive, Li Fan isn't rebuilding. He's reloading. And now he's coming for everyone. Okay, bro, no more talking. Let's diving into the story. Li Fan was a super important guy. He was the Grand Tutor, which basically meant he was the top boss. One night, he sat in a giant fancy hall with a bunch of guests. Musicians played, people danced, and Li Fan sipped from a golden cup like a real big shot. He thought to himself that, for 50 years, he went from nothing to being the most powerful man in the world. Not bad, right? He remembered when he was young and super poor, just a nobody walking around in a little village. Now, he had it all. He thought life was awesome. Like, he couldn't ask for more. He already has everything. But then, bro, things got weird. A courtier ran over to him, bowing like crazy. The guy told Li Fan that there was fire falling from the sky. He said it had to be some kind of amazing sign. All the ladies at the party started freaking out and said the thing in the sky was coming toward Li Fan's house. Li Fan looked up, and his face turned super serious. Dude, he was not amused anymore. High over the city, two people were fighting in the sky. One looked like he was on fire with gold flames, and the other was glowing with purple energy. It was totally insane, like something out of a fantasy movie. Li Fan realized what was going on. He thought these guys looked like cultivators, and he could not believe it. So, was the cultivator indeed a real thing? Some guests started shouting about immortal masters and called it a lucky sign. But Li Fan looked terrified. He could not understand how this was happening. The scene went back to the sky. The purple guy, Dao Xuanzi, yelled at the gold guy, Ku Hong. Dao Xuanzi told Ko Hong to hand over a special cultivation method, or one of them was going to die tonight. Ku Hong was surrounded by fire and said he had been stuck at a weak stage for 100 years because he didn't have that method. He said he was about to die of old age soon, so there was no way he would give up something that might save his life. Dao Xuanzi said that the path to power was something everyone walked alone. He said even though there were lots of ways to get stronger, most people were stuck forever. Knowing a man in front of him has a method to make him strong, of course, he wouldn't miss it. He wanted that method, and he was not going to let Ko Hong escape. Hearing that bullshit, Ku Hong started laughing like a crazy dude. He said they were friends for 100 years, but now they were trying to kill each other just to stay alive. He knew he was probably going to lose, but he wanted to mess things up. He talked about the mortals below and wondered if Dao Xuanzi could handle the dangerous miasma if they kept fighting here. Dao Xuanzi pulled out a giant purple sword. He yelled at Ku Hong, but Ku Hong just charged at him, using his power like a giant dragon made of fire. Ku Hong said that if Dao Xuanzi could not handle the miasma, maybe he had a chance to survive. They clashed in midair. The sword and the dragon smashed into each other. Looking at that craziness in the sky, Li Fan couldn't do anything. Suddenly, a big explosion lit up the whole city, as if the world was ending. After that, Xuanjing City was just a burning pile of rubble. Buildings were smashed, everything was on fire, and people were thrown everywhere. Li Fan woke up in the middle of the disaster, hurt and coughing. He looked around for his family, but all he saw were dead bodies. His family and his guests were gone. The city was destroyed. It was a total nightmare. Everything is gone in 1 second. He thought that the city used to be super lively and full of life, but now it was just blood, fire, and ruined buildings. Almost everyone was dead, and all of it happened because of those two insane cultivators who decided to throw a fight over his city. Li Fan could not believe it. He even started laughing, not because he had lost everything and could not handle it, but because he had finally found a new purpose. Li Fan remembered that, for years, he had searched everywhere for proof that immortals or cultivators were real. He became a top official, traveled to the north, south, east, and west, but never found anything. By the time he gave up, he was already old. And now, out of nowhere, two of them dropped in and messed up his whole life. He thought fate was really messing with him. Then, he did something wild. He started glowing with blue energy, and weird symbols appeared around him. He yelled for the system. Yeah, this was his special treasure, a power he found in this world. It could turn real things into illusions and let him go back in time to a breakpoint. His breakpoint was the moment he turned 17, around the time when the big test to enter the palace happened. So basically, he could reset his life to 17 again. Li Fan actually already lived one life in this world before, and this was his second try. In his first life, he was just a regular dude. He wanted to pass the exams and become a super important person, but he always failed. He started a business, got married, had kids, and lived a normal life. When he was old and dying, he finally awakened his treasure, the system, which allowed him to restart everything and live his second life. He knew that this power was the reason he became so successful in this life. He could go back and start over anytime he wanted, as long as the system was charged. But he was not ready to restart yet. He still had stuff to do before leaving this life behind, not after finding his new purpose. Some time passed. Li Fan, still dressed as the Grand Tutor, was in a tent at a garrison camp. He wrote orders for his soldiers. He told them to go into the ruined city and keep order after the disaster. He also wanted his trusted soldiers to control the city, help rebuild things, and, most importantly, secretly look for those two insane cultivators who wrecked everything. Months went by. Xuanjing City was getting rebuilt, slowly but surely. Li Fan sat in a big hall, listening to a report. His subordinate told him that they still found nothing about the two cultivators. Li Fan looked totally defeated. He realized he should not have hoped for anything else. He thought it was time to give up on this life. He called out the system again, and his body filled with blue light and symbols. The system asked if he wanted to return to his breakpoint. Li Fan said yes. He sat cross-legged, glowing like a superhero, and his whole form started to shift. He turned young again, leaving behind his old body. He fell backward into a swirling vortex, ready to start over. In this new life, he will find those two cultivator bastards. For a quick moment, he saw all the important stuff he did in his second life, like a highlight reel in his head. The system told him how things went. It said that, after he returned to the beginning, he was so happy that he acted like a goofball, and his aunt almost made him drink some weird exorcism water from the local witch. Half a year later, Li Fan took a big test called the provincial exam. He didn't do amazing, but he still passed and became a jurin, which made his ancestors super proud. 2 years after that, he took even bigger exams and totally nailed them, becoming a jinshi. That was a big deal. Because he was so clever, he used his connections to get a job as a county magistrate in Wen County. He didn't stop there. In his third year, he started picking his own crew, loyal friends and subordinates. He even made explosives and matchlock rifles. Yes, this dude was making guns before everyone else. By year 5, there were some rebels attacking Prince Langya's house. Li Fan led his troops, saved the prince's family, and the prince was so grateful. Life was good. Then, year 6, Li Fan got promoted and married the vice minister's daughter. Next thing you know, he had a son. 10 years in, Princess Langya had a son too, and Li Fan went over to congratulate her. The years just kept rolling. When the emperor died, Prince Langya became the new emperor and gave Li Fan even more power and trust. He basically ran the country, bro. He kept moving up, year after year. He helped clear the empress's name in a witchcraft case, but she was still kept locked away. Someone snitched on Li Fan for visiting her, and then, out of nowhere, the emperor got assassinated. It was chaos. The empress was executed, but the crown prince took the throne and gave Li Fan even fancier titles. Now, Li Fan was like the boss of all bosses. He even had a son with the empress dowager. People started calling the Grand Tutor and saying he was more important than the emperor. 50 years later, 2 crazy cultivators showed up and wrecked everything. He barely escaped. So, that's all the second life recap. Back in the present, young Li Fan stood in his room, surrounded by fancy blue light and streams of numbers, like something out of a sci-fi movie. He started thinking about what was real and what was just in his head. Was it all a dream? A simulation? Who even knew at this point? Then, a big holographic menu popped up in front of him. The system gave him 4 choices. He could keep one thing from that last simulation, an item he owned, his cultivation skills, give someone else his memories, or skip all that to charge his system faster. Our boy thought about it. He realized that the safest bet was to make his magic system charge up faster. That way, it could protect him whenever he was in danger. Basically, the charge is the thing that gonna protect him when he receives a fatal blow, and the thing that gonna let him turn back time. He didn't want to gamble this time. The first and second options are only for the cultivator, so he skips. The third is also sketchy. Who would know what people are gonna do if they have their last life memories? Yeah, the last option is the best. The system showed his stats on another screen. Li Fan saw his name, his age, and his mental age. Dude, he was actually like 166 years old inside. He thought about how living so many lives made people kind of tired and messed up in the head. Too many memories could break your brain, but if you became strong enough, you could handle it. That's why he needs cultivation to increase his age and mental fortitude. His eyes were burning with excitement now. He wanted to learn the secret of cultivation from those two wild cultivators. He knew they would show up in 50 years. This time, he'd be ready for them. He thought maybe he could use stuff like guns, explosives, or even that weird miasma the cultivators talked about. But he couldn't just sit around for 50 years waiting. The two came from a place called the Ruinous Abyss in the east. So, Li Fan decided he would send people to check out that creepy abyss as soon as possible. He suddenly remembered something important. He thought the worst thing ever was having no goal. He remembered waking up in bed with the Empress Dowager, feeling empty and bored, even when he had everything. Power and pleasure? Boring after a while. Maybe if things kept repeating, he would have wanted to end his own life. But then those two cultivators showed up and changed everything. Suddenly, he saw a whole new world he wanted to explore. He got hyped again. Energy buzzed around his fists. He wanted to become a cultivator. He wanted to live forever. He swore that nobody could stop him, and he was looking forward to seeing Dao Xuanzi and Ku Hong again in 50 years. Years flew by. With his 2 lifetimes of experience, our protagonist crushed every challenge. This time, his essays were so awesome that he got first place in every single imperial exam. Everyone was talking about him. He still took the same job, but now, because he knew everything about the officials and the city, Wen County became his turf in no time. He started building his own powerful team, picking out the best people who had been loyal in his last life. He started doing secret, sneaky stuff. On a stormy night, he found a guy to act as a double for Prince Langya, made him super loyal, and then, when the time was right, arranged for his own guy to take out the real prince's family. The body double took the prince's place, and from then on, Li Fan pulled all the strings behind the scenes. He kept making power moves. By year 9, the body double Prince Langya married Princess Langya. On the wedding night, Li Fan himself showed up and, let's just say Princess Langya ended up having his baby. Fast forward a few years, the emperor got really sick, and when it was time, Li Fan rushed to the capital with his squad. The fake Prince Langya became emperor, and our boy stuffed the court with his own people. He got promoted again, making himself grand tutor and controlling the empire in the open. Under his rule, things ran even better than before. Time jumped ahead again. By year 35, Li Fan was old and powerful, standing on a balcony in his fancy robe. One of his masked agents knelt before him, reporting about the ruinous abyss. The fog over that place disappeared for half a day every 15 years, and they finally saw something cool down there. Using a telescope, they saw an upside-down world with mountains, glowing buildings, flying beasts, and even a city in the clouds. Crazy stuff, man. But everyone has a different image when looking at that place, so there must be some magic involved. Li Fan wanted to know if there was any way down to the bottom, but his agent said no way. Anyone who tried got destroyed by super strong astral wind. Even the best armor couldn't last a second. Our boy now was deep in thought. He realized he'd just have to be patient and wait for those two cultivators to show up. And then, boom! 50 years later, Xuanjing City was calm under the full moon, but suddenly, purple energy and orange fire exploded in the sky. Dao Xuanzi and Ku Hong were back, fighting just like last time. But this time, Li Fan was ready. From below, dozens of fiery projectiles shot up at the two cultivators. Ku Hong blocked with golden energy shields and shouted, wanting to know who dared attack him. He even caught a rifle out of the air, checking it out like he was looking at some weird gadget. To be honest, he thought it was kind of cool. He realized that these mortals actually made guns using machines and gunpowder instead of magic or energy. He called it a clever invention, but he also thought it was only useful because this place had no full power for cultivators. Anywhere else, he said, it would just be junk. Then he crushed the gun with his hand, tossing it aside into the burning remains of the projectiles. After that, Ku Hong decided he was done playing around. He said that mortals daring to attack cultivators must have a death wish. His eyes started to glow, and he got super pissed. He used a move called the Fire Dragon's Roar. He threw his hands forward, and, no joke, a giant golden dragon made of fire shot down at the city. It hit the ground and exploded, blowing up a huge part of Xuanjing. The place was on fire, buildings smashed, everything looked totally cooked. He then stared down at the city, expecting everyone to be toast. But then he noticed something that freaked him out. Tons of the soldiers were still alive. He couldn't believe it. He thought there was no way mortals could survive his fire dragon's roar. Right then, Dao Xuanzi showed up next to him. He was holding some of those bullets, but they were covered in a thick red liquid. He figured it out, these bullets were soaked in mortal blood, and after Ko Hong got hit by the immortal mortal miasma, his powers got a lot weaker. He also said they were ambushed the second they arrived, and the enemy even used that nasty miasma on them. He thought it was time to get out of there because the place was just too weird and dangerous. So, they tried to leave. But then, a crazy loud voice thundered from below. It was Li Fan, using some kind of loudspeaker. He called out their names and told them that if they ran away now, everyone in the cultivation world would find out they got the core formation method. Dude, both cultivators were totally shocked. Only they were supposed to know about that secret. How did Li Fan find out? Ko Hong demanded to know who was talking. But it got even crazier. Another round of cannonballs, this time covered in spooky red miasma, blasted into the sky. Dao Xuanzi shouted for Ko Hong to dodge, but it was too late, bro. All the cannonballs exploded in huge bloody bursts, slamming the two cultivators into the burning ruins below. Down in a massive crater, both of them were beaten badly. Li Fan's elite soldiers surrounded them, weapons ready and looking tough. One of the soldiers told them that Grand Tutor said they could live if they surrendered. Dao Xuanzi just knelt there, staring at the ground, thinking that surrender sounded like a joke. Ko Hong was dying fast. With his last strength, he forced a glowing storage ring off his finger and shoved it into Dao Xuanzi's hand, telling him to take it and go. Then, he died. A gigantic ghostly dragon roared up from his body, flew into the sky, and vanished. Ko Hong's body faded into light, and only a weird wooden branch was left for a second. Then it disappeared too. A voice from the sky explained what just happened. Ko Hong, a Foundation establishment cultivator, trained for over 200 years, used a super rare object called the Keeley Dragon Branch. But here in the land of immortal extinction, he got jumped by thousands of mortals, destroyed by that miasma, and lost all his cultivation. Now he was dead, his Dao was gone, and everything was over. Back in the ruined city, Ko Hong was gone. Only a bloody patch on the ground showed where he died. Dao Xuanzi was beaten, surrounded by soldiers. One soldier told him again that Grand Tutor didn't want to kill him, and he could live if he gave up. Far away, on a rocky outcrop, Li Fan watched the whole thing. He thought that when Ko Hong died, he heard a weird voice from the sky. But honestly, he didn't care about that anymore. He realized hunting immortals wasn't going to work. The immortal mortal miasma was way stronger against cultivators than he expected. Down in the crater, Dao Xuanzi started talking, his voice all raspy but filled with hate. He said he didn't know who these people were or what they wanted, but he and Ko Hong had been tricked and destroyed, and there was nothing left to say. He glared with crazy blue eyes. He was furious. He said it was despicable to use mortals in that miasma, and that Ko Hong died for nothing. He then stood up. He told everyone to look at Ko Hong's special Dao item, and then he wanted to show off his own. He floated up, and a dark, scary energy swirled around him. Dao Xuanzi said his Dao foundation was called Dao Xuan. Suddenly, a huge ghostly sword the size of a mountain appeared in the sky, pointing straight down at the city. He yelled he had a sword and invited everyone to look at it. Then he slammed the sword down. A giant explosion of purple and white energy flashed out, engulfing everything in sight. Even Li Fan, standing far away, was swallowed up in the light. In that moment, our boy called out the system. Right after this, everything glitched out. The system told Li Fan this simulation was over. Li Fan, now a young dude again, sat up in his room, his chest pounding. Blue energy and glowing symbols faded around him. He was shocked. He realized that peak Foundation establishment cultivators like those guys were way too strong. If the immortal mortal miasma hadn't been so deadly to them, he figured he could reincarnate 100 times and still not beat them. He was surprised at how much Dao Xuanzi and Ko Hong really cared about each other. They called each other brother for 100 years, and it wasn't just words. Even at the end, when Ko Hong was dying, he gave Dao Xuanzi the core formation method, hoping his friend could survive. Dao Xuanzi, after seeing his friend die, lost it and chose to blow everyone up with his final move. Their friendship was on another level. Our protagonist remembered Dao Xuanzi, saying that the path to true power was a lonely road. Even if there were a lot of ways to get stronger, most people would never make it, and nobody could really share the journey. If even best bros like those two ended up like this, what would the rest of the cultivation world be like? Li Fan decided he wouldn't be scared. With his treasure, the system, and if he was careful, maybe nothing could stop him. He thought maybe next time, he could try to win one of the cultivators over instead of attacking both. He checked his new stats on the system. His mental age limit only went up a little. Counting all his lives, this was already his 5th shot. The path to immortality was getting way harder. The system showed his info. He was physically 20, mentally 216, and the system was charging up, but still only at 30%. Li Fan hoped the next 50 years would be worth it. Later, in year 35, Li Fan, now old again as Grand Tutor, stood at the edge of the ruinous abyss. The chasm was full of thick, weird fog, but, just as he'd learned from the last simulation, every 15 years, the fog lifted. He waited, watching as a huge wind blew the fog away like an upside-down waterfall. He looked through his telescope into the abyss, but the hell, what he saw was creepy, ruined buildings, total wreckage. And floating in the haze there were faint red letters that said, "The way to immortal is dead." Li Fan jerked back, freaked out and shaking. He thought, what the heck happened down there? What happened to the whole cultivation world? What do those words mean? Skip a couple of years, and it was already year 50, and the two cultivators come again, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi, were floating way up in the sky, yelling at each other like old enemies at a family reunion. Ku Hong was done with Dao Xuanzi's nonsense and told him not to push his luck. But before Dao Xuanzi could even say a word, our boy Li Fan's soldiers started blasting up from the rooftops, shooting a whole miasma of bullets right at Ku Hong. Now, Li Fan wasn't just hiding in the back. He had his men shouting up at the sky, calling Ko Hong a brat, and pretending they were working for Dao Xuanzi. He made it sound like they'd been waiting all night, just to get Ku Hong for Master Dao Xuanzi. Bro, Ku Hong was not having it. He threw up a big golden shield and blocked all those bullets, but inside, he was freaking out. The soldiers' bullets were covered with immortal miasma. He called Dao Xuanzi out, saying, "Dude, you're rotten for using that stuff." But Dao Xuanzi was just as confused. He looked down at those soldiers and wondered what the hell was going on. Why were these mortals attacking Ku Hong and saying they were sent by him? And how did they even get their hands on immortal miasma? Dao Xuanzi shouted that none of this was his doing. But then Li Fan's voice, loud as thunder, started booming and accused him of making promises, telling everyone that if they helped kill Ku Hong and stole his core formation method, Dao Xuanzi would help them escape this rotten land. Ko Hong wasn't buying Dao Xuanzi's denial either. He said, "Look, besides you and me, who else even knows about this core formation trick?" Dao Xuanzi started to sweat, realizing whoever was speaking must know some serious secrets. Li Fan kept pushing, saying the mortals were in big trouble because of this miasma business, and if Dao Xuanzi didn't help them leave, his whole clan would probably get wiped out. Seeing all this, Ko Hong totally lost faith in his bro. Flames burst all over him, and he called Dao Xuanzi out for acting noble but playing dirty. He said, if he wanted the core formation method so badly, he could come and try to take it. Then he launched the wildest fire attack. Flame Dragon's Fury. Boom! Fire everywhere! Dao Xuanzi whipped out a huge purple sword and blocked it. The two of them started going at each other like maniacs in the sky. Down below, Li Fan didn't sit still. He told his soldiers to switch sides and help Ku Hong instead, saying Dao Xuanzi was too dangerous to let win. Ko Hong kept roasting Dao Xuanzi, saying people who do bad stuff always get their payback. He laughed at him for being so smart, but ending up all alone with his immortal followers against him. Then he revealed he'd learned a brand new Dao art and trapped Dao Xuanzi in a cage made of fire pillars. But Dao Xuanzi powered up hard and smashed his way out, yelling for the cage to break. Things just got crazier. The fight became harder. Meanwhile, Li Fan kept playing Puppet Master. He told Ku Hong they'd help, and his soldiers fired off another wave of those nasty miasma bullets. Dao Xuanzi got blasted, and then Ku Hong used his power, stabbing Dao Xuanzi right through the chest and sending roots bursting out of his body. Dude was in pure agony, screaming about the Chiu Dragon Branch, before the roots blew him apart in a storm of red light. A voice chimed in for a moment, talking about Dao Xuanzi's long life of cultivation, 212 years, now dead in the land of the immortal. His story just ended. Everything returned to the heavens. After that chaos, our MC Li Fan, now old and walking like a respectable grand tutor, showed up to talk with the exhausted, battered Ku Hong. He greeted Ku Hong real polite and begged for mercy, asking if he could let the 1,000 people in his clan live. But Ku Hong was kinda mad and asked why a mortal like him would even mess around in a cultivator fight. Li Fan played innocent, saying he was only trying to survive. He told him that if Ku Hong had lost, his own people would have been toast for sure. Ku Hong just laughed sadly at that, saying these days everyone was desperate just to live. He started talking about Dao Xuanzi, saying he'd trusted the guy for 100 years but didn't expect him to fall so low, even tricking mortals. He said there was no way out of this miserable land, and even immortals found it hard to escape, so how could mortals possibly leave? Li Fan freaked out and asked if he really didn't know a way out either. Ku Hong said, "Yep, that's right." Anyway, our protagonist realized this wasn't the best spot to chat, so he invited Ku Hong to a safer place. Later, underground, the two sat across a table. Li Fan pressed Ku Hong again, asking if it was truly impossible for mortals to get out. Ku Hong said, "Bro, why would he even lie about this? Maybe if someone were a golden core stage cultivator, they could carry a mortal through the barrier. But with his level? No way." Li Fan was pretty crushed, asking if there was really no hope for mortals to escape. Ku Hong explained, "To leave this land you had to break through the immortal extinction formation, and with a regular body, that was impossible. Plus, Li Fan was an old dude, so why was he so obsessed with leaving anyway? Wasn't being the local emperor good enough?" But our poor guy kept pushing, asking if maybe his descendants could become cultivators and leave. Ku Hong basically laughed in his face. He said, "Not only was there no spiritual energy here, so no one could cultivate, but mortals and immortals were totally different now. Mortals were covered in miasma, so even if the path to immortality was right in front of them, they could see it, but never touch it." He told Li Fan to give up on that dream. Li Fan fell silent. He was hurting inside, thinking that, wow, immortals and mortals really could never mix? There was truly no way. Ku Hong finished with a solid, "Nope, no way." In the end, Li Fan said if Ku Hong had nothing else to say, he'd leave. But as he turned, the old sly fox activated a hidden device in his sleeve and blasted Ku Hong with a thick red cloud of immortal miasma. Ku Hong was in total shock, screaming as the miasma burned him. Li Fan just looked back with a cold face, thinking to himself that if immortals and mortals couldn't exist together, then how could a mortal ever really trust a word from a so-called immortal? Damn, our MC played it cold. But can you blame him? In a world like this, trust is for fools. After that, our boy kept thinking about everything Ku Hong told him. It was some deep stuff, bro. So here's the deal. Ages ago, there was a massive change in the immortal world. Mortals got hit with some nasty plague, and at first, cultivators thought, not my problem. But when one of them caught it, things got ugly real fast. Turns out, the plague spread through the same spiritual energy cultivators needed to survive. So, basically, the one thing keeping them alive was also killing them now. When cultivators got infected, best case, they lost all their powers and dropped in rank. Worst case, they lost everything and just died. And these guys? They got mad. So mad, they started blaming mortals for everything and went on a rampage, hunting them down. But that plan totally backfired. The more mortals they killed, the crazier the plague got. It spread everywhere, even faster, making things 100 times worse. But cultivators weren't about to just die off without a fight. Some started working on cures and ways to resist. Others came up with this big, great migration plan. Kick out all the mortals, ship them off to some dead-end worlds using flying boats and magic shuttles, then lock those places up forever. But it didn't work out the way they hoped. Over time, new mortals kept popping up, even from cultivator families, and inside every one of them was this shadow of the plague. This thing was so toxic to immortals that, if a mortal wanted to cultivate, they had to clean themselves up first. People started calling it the immortal mortal miasma. It pretty much split the whole world into two teams, immortals and mortals. No mixing allowed. Back in the present, our MC was staring at a scroll, reading about how this place he was stuck in was basically the border between the two worlds, a forbidden land for cultivators. He was getting stressed, bro. He thought, what are the odds he'd meet cultivators in this wasteland again? His own life was near the end, 70 years old already, and even with all his do-overs, his max was 86. 16 years left? He wasn't betting on seeing another immortal again. He started to panic. Was he really going to spend eternity just looping through boring mortal lives? Nearly 300 years of struggle, and the guy still couldn't accept it. He refused to believe there was no way out. Then he got hit with a new idea. How did those mortals in the original Great Migration even get sent here? Maybe the answer was there. Cut to the underground room. Ku Hong was still chained up, looking like he'd been through hell, while Li Fan stood over him, not in the mood for games. Ko Hong just laughed, asking if Li Fan was really still clinging to hope. The dude was 70. Did he really think he could start cultivating now? Our MC snapped back, saying maybe if Ko Hong helped him find a way out, he'd bring him along to the immortal worlds. Ko Hong just called him a tricky snake and said he wasn't falling for it. But Li Fan insisted, even if he was lying, at least it was something to hope for. He asked if Ko Hong really wanted to rot away in this dead end, or if he'd rather try for a shot at real life. After a pause, Ko Hong admitted that, back in the day, mortals were shipped around using flying magic tools, boats and shuttles and stuff. That was when the immortal world was packed and lively, but after everything went downhill, those magic rides basically disappeared. Li Fan wanted to know if the huge disaster Ko Hong mentioned was just the plague, but he explained that the immortal mortal miasma alone wasn't enough to wreck the whole world. The real reason things went bad was all because the immortal method cannot be cultivated together. In ancient times, everyone learned together, trained together, sparred together, straight up chill vibes. But then one day, everyone realized their training was slowing down every time someone else practiced the same method. They could see a number of people using the same method. Suddenly, everyone was enemies, because if you trained the same way as someone else, you were basically blocking their path to power. It turned into a giant battle royale. Even people hiding out in the woods got found, because cultivators could sense anyone using the same method. So how did people train nowadays? Li Fan wanted to know, and Ko Hong broke it down. There were two main groups you could join. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance, where you did missions and traded stuff for points to buy new methods, and the 5 Elders Association, where you signed your soul away for a while, serving the 5 Elders in exchange for a shot at power. Li Fan thought this sounded like methods were easy to get, but Ko Hong said nope, they were all junk, just fragments. You could only go so far before you hit a wall, and had to switch methods and basically start over. But there was one cheat code. Everyone learned a special secret art called the Supreme Primal True Scripture. It wasn't a real cultivation method, more like a life hack that let you ditch your old powers and start a new method without losing all your progress. Pretty wild, right? Li Fan was shocked something like that even existed. He realized the timing of this miracle art showing up was way too perfect, like someone was pulling strings to make sure everyone accepted the new rules. He sighed, saying the path was too hard. The real kicker? Dao Xuanzi had died because of chasing a core formation method, but what he didn't know was that Ko Hong had run off with a true art that could take someone straight to the nascent soul realm. Basically, the big leagues. Li Fan almost flipped when he heard that. A real nascent soul true art? That was priceless. Ko Hong kept dropping knowledge about how, when a cultivator died, the world voice announced it with big signs in the sky. But then he also heard rumors that, across thousands of years, some mortals from these dead zones had actually made it back to the immortal world. Just hearsay. But maybe there was something to it. Li Fan was like, hey, sometimes rumors are just facts with bad PR. If there was even a tiny chance he wasn't giving up. Ko Hong shook his head, wondering why an old guy like Li Fan was still fighting so hard. Li Fan made a deal. If Ko Hong helped him find a way back, he'd not only let Ko Hong die, but return all his stuff, plus Dao Xuanzi's, and even hand over that nascent soul true art. Ko Hong got super hyped. He asked if Li Fan was for real. RMC said of course, and just like that, they were in business. The two of them started hitting the books, searching every dusty scroll and record for clues about the Great Migration. Li Fan even sent the army to start digging up ancient tombs, but the officials freaked out and sent complaints every day. Yet, Li Fan told them to deal with it. He didn't care what anyone thought. The problem was, there was just too much history gone missing, and his body was running out of time. Flash forward 16 years, Li Fan looked too old, barely more than a skeleton, hobbling into the secret room on his cane. He was on his last breath, but before he died he wanted to check what exactly was inside his storage ring. He slipped it on, blue energy swirling, and out popped a scroll. It was a nascent soul-level cultivation method, with 0 cultivators for it right now. Yeah, this is the method that Ko Hong had. Li Fan just stared at it, thinking how wild it was to have this huge pile of treasure but not be able to use any of it. He was still just a mortal and can't use it. Next, he pulled out Dao Xuanzi's rusted sword. Supposedly, once a cultivator died, their magic items lost their power, so this sword should have been a dud. But wait, Li Fan's eyes went wide, because suddenly a system message popped up right on the sword's hilt. The system said, hey, this sword can actually be charged. Did he want to go for it? Yes or no? Dude, this old man almost died now, but how stupid is he to just check the loot now? Everyone knows you should check the loot right after the battle. Anyway, back to Li Fan. Honestly, he barely had any strength left, but when the system asked if he wanted to charge up that rusty Dao Xuanzi sword, he gave it a yes. No hesitation. Instantly, the sword just glitched out and turned into pure light, getting sucked straight into the system. The system told him that his anchor charge progress was now at 1%, and he had one anchor point ready to go. Our MC was thinking hard, remembering what the system explained. If he got the anchor charge up to 100%, he could unlock a second anchor point. That would mean he could start over from different points in time, not just the same 17-year-old. Whenever he reset his life, that sounded pretty epic, bro. Maybe he could skip a boring life and start when he already becomes a grand tutor. And if only he could ever escape this boring mortal wasteland, there'd be a ton of magical loot out there. All he needed was to break free and start grinding for real treasures. And now, he figured it was time to end this round and called out to the system, ready for the next simulation. Suddenly, everything went blue and blurry. Our MC was floating in some kind of void, and the system menu popped up, telling him the simulation was over. It said he could keep one thing, either an item, his cultivation level, someone else's memory, or he could give up everything for a faster system charge. Our boy didn't even blink. He picked to keep one item. All of his stuff appeared in front of him. The busted sword, the storage ring, spirit stones, and a super fancy cultivation scroll. But of course, the system was stingy as always. He couldn't keep the whole of it, just one thing. So, he grabbed the nascent soul method scroll, figuring that was the real jackpot. The scroll glowed like crazy, and just like that, Li Fan got pulled back to his starting point, young again, in his room. The system updated his stats, showing his name, age, mental age, which was getting pretty insane now. And the fact that the scroll was now bound to his system forever, our protagonist was hyped. Now that the cultivation method was locked in, he saw 100 new ways to scheme. He remembered how last time, when he dug up tombs all over the empire, it nearly caused a riot at court and people freaked out. The plan was too wild, too fast. So, he started plotting. If he was more patient and started working on people's minds early, maybe in 20 years, he could make tomb hunting totally normal. And then, time went on. His sixth life was rolling. Li Fan started moving pieces behind the scenes, changing the world little by little. In year 5, a new group called the Antiquarian School showed up with a bunch of super old books. They took them to the capital and blew everyone's minds. The texts were masterpieces, never seen before. It's full of bragging about how ancient knowledge would answer any question. In year 6, the emperor got deathly sick, but the Antiquarian School handed over a secret pill. Boom. Emperor went from dying to doing jumping jacks in days. People started to believe these ancient secrets could really save lives. By year 11, there was a crazy tomb robbing case. Over 100 people got caught. The local big shot didn't know what to do, so he sent word to Xuanjing for the emperor's decision. The answer took a whole month, but instead of death, the tomb raiders just got sent to work in the capital. Tomb hunting was getting popular, and nobody wanted to slow it down. Year 15. The emperor was dying again. Dude just couldn't catch a break and wanted another immortal pill. He sent more than 100,000 soldiers to dig up tombs everywhere. Still no luck, and the emperor croaked anyway. But now the whole country was obsessed with finding anything ancient. The throne went to Prince Langya, but honestly, our MC Li Fan was the one pulling all the strings from the shadows. By year 23, tombs were being opened left and right, and historians finally pieced together the name of the OG dynasty, the Qi dynasty. Li Fan posted a huge reward. Anyone who found a Qi dynasty tomb would become a marquis. Talk about motivation. Fast forward to year 25, and guess what? Someone finally found the tomb of the Qi dynasty's first emperor, Yi Xing. Li Fan, now middle-aged, with the classic mustache and goatee, headed out with his squad. The tomb was wild. The main hallway stretched forever, covered in super old murals that looked brand new. Inside the main chamber, the ceiling was covered in glowing pearls, making it look like you were standing under the night sky. There were fake mountains poking out of a sea of clouds, and nobody could figure out how this cloud sea just stayed put for thousands of years. That was some immortal-level tech, for sure. On the highest fake mountain was a tiny old hut. The fields around it were overgrown, but as they got close, they realized the roof was made from golden threads. Li Fan told 2 guards to open the door. Inside, instead of a fancy coffin, there was just a plain memorial tablet, which read, Tomb of Tai Hong Sect Outer Disciple Yi Xing. Our hero was a little disappointed. The guy wasn't even a real immortal, just an outsider from the Tai Hang sect, probably sent here to manage the mortal migration back in the day. He thought, if Ku Hong was right, all these sects got wiped out ages ago, so Yi Xing must have been the last one holding things together. He wondered if they'd ever find the flying boat used for the big migration. A few days later, after searching the main tomb, Li Fan was in his study when a nervy subordinate rushed in and said they found a record mentioning a flying boat in a nearby tomb. But of course, the place had been robbed ages ago, and anything useful was long gone. Bro, our MC was pissed. He smashed his desk in a total rage. He couldn't believe it. Every time he got close, it slipped through his fingers like some kind of cruel joke. But he wasn't giving up. He doubled the reward. Anyone who found a clue about the immortal boat would be made a marquis. No questions asked. 10 years later, Li Fan was old and powerful again, sitting up high while his underlings reported in. This time, something big happened. A group tried to dig up a random grave but got wrecked by some mysterious power. Even the best experts couldn't even scratch the place. Li Fan ordered them to bring out the immortal mortal miasma, crack the tomb open, and be ready to tell him as soon as possible if they found anything that looked like a flying boat. When they finally got inside, one of his guys ran up, losing his mind, and said there was something that looked just like a flying boat inside. Our MC stormed in, and there it was. A small wooden boat, simple and plain, sitting right there among the burial goods. Li Fan couldn't believe it. Was this really it? Had he finally found the legendary flying boat? Bro, what I could see was just a toy boat, lol. Anyway, our boy had been after this flying boat forever, and now, finally, it was sitting right in front of him. But that wasn't even the craziest part. Right next to the boat, he spotted a message carved into the wall by the tomb owner before he died, and it laid everything out. Suddenly, in Li Fan's mind, the story started playing out like a movie. Turns out, the tomb guy was called Qian Hong, a Foundation establishment cultivator from over 3,000 years ago. Dude had gotten chased by some nasty enemies and, with nowhere else to go, ducked into the land of immortal extinction. But this place was a complete dead zone for cultivators. No spiritual energy, just a few spirit stones to keep him going. Those ran out fast, and Qian Hong's powers faded away day by day. So he started searching everywhere, guessing that back when all those mortals got dumped in this wasteland, maybe a flying boat or two got left behind. He spent decades hunting, until he finally stumbled on the epic tomb of Yi Xing. Inside, he really did find a flying boat. But bro, the power core was totally busted. Qian Hong didn't know anything about fixing magic stuff, so he could only stare at it and give up on ever escaping this dump. The guy was crushed, and that's how he ended up stuck here for good. Back to the present, Li Fan checked out Qian Hong's last words, carved right on the wall. It said, if some future cultivator found the tomb, Qian Hong wanted his bones sent back to the cultivation world, and the stuff in the tomb was their reward. Our boy thought, with all those crazy defenses outside, no wonder Qian Hong was sure only a cultivator would show up someday. Now, Li Fan was ready to see what kind of loot he'd left behind. On the floor, there was a stone tablet and 2 scrolls. Suddenly the system chimed in, calling the stone tablet a halting stella fragment, some mystical object of heaven and earth. But Li Fan could only sigh. He'd blasted the tomb open using so much immortal mortal miasma that the tablet's power fizzled out. Now it was just a boring old rock. Typical Li Fan luck, honestly. Then he looked at the scrolls, and the system flashed up their names. One was called Lesser Huanzhen Art, for Qi, refining stage, and the other was Cloud Water Record, for foundation establishment stage. Weird thing though, the system said there was already one person cultivating each. Li Fan was like, what the hell? Was this some sort of trap? But after 3,000 years, it was impossible anyone could still be alive from back then, not even the strongest immortals. He guessed that maybe these cultivation manuals had been added to some big archive after the Great Calamity, and over the years, all sorts of people had taken turns practicing them. Honestly, the whole thing seemed sketchy. But never mind that. He finally picked up the Tai Hong boat. The system announced it loud and clear. This was the special tool the Tai Hong sect used to move mortals around, though its core was busted. Still, after chasing this thing for so many years, Li Fan felt like he'd finally hit the jackpot. Sure, he couldn't fix it, and neither could Qian Hong, but maybe, just maybe, he could find someone who could. Suddenly, time skip. 15 years later, it was year 50, and it was deja vu all over again. Up in the night sky above Xuanjing, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi were back at it, shouting at each other and about to throw down. Just like in every other timeline, Ko Hong was yelling for Dao Xuanzi not to push him, while Dao Xuanzi demanded the cultivation method or else. But right then, our boy just blasted their argument from down below. He told them it was just a cultivation manual, and was it really worth dying over? Both the immortals freaked out for a second, wondering who had the guts to jump into their business. Li Fan told them to come down for a proper chat, and believe it or not, they actually did. Now, all three were chilling at Li Fan's manor, drinking together like some kind of weird family reunion. Li Fan gave them this whole story about how his ancestor predicted on his deathbed that two people would appear from the ruinous abyss one day, and that would be the chance for his clan to finally escape this dump. He played it up big, saying his clan had been waiting thousands of years, and now the prophecy was finally coming true. Time to celebrate. Ko Hong asked for Li Fan's name, so he introduced himself politely, real smooth. Dao Xuanzi wanted to know more about this opportunity to escape, and Li Fan started dropping ancient sect names. He mentioned the Taiyan sect, the masters of prophecy and calculation. Ku Hong got excited, saying that sect was legendary for its divination skills. So Li Fan just kept spinning the story. His ancestor was good at divination, didn't like real cultivation, and when heaven and earth changed, he volunteered to help the mortals migrate. That's why the family ended up stuck here. Dao Xuanzi was starting to buy it, and asked why Li Fan stopped their fight. Li Fan told them, as soon as he saw the two of them, he knew the prophecy was coming true, and he had to keep them from killing each other. Dao Xuanzi explained that cultivation methods were so rare outside, it was normal for friends to want to murder each other over one. Li Fan put on his sad face, acting all disappointed, then hinted that his ancestor left behind an epic method, one that led straight to the Golden Core realm. Ko Hong lost it. Dude was so hyped, he said if Dao Xuanzi got that method, there'd be no reason to fight anymore. Dao Xuanzi asked what Li Fan wanted in return. Li Fan said his ancestor's last wish was to get back to the Taihang sect. Other than the method, he'd also left behind the Taihang boat, but it was broken. Supposedly, two future cultivators, one a sword guy, the other an artifact nerd, would someday appear and help fix the boat, letting his descendants finally escape. Li Fan winked, basically saying, "Hey, that's you two." Dao Xuanzi was impressed by how on point the prophecy was. He admitted Ko Hong was obsessed with artifact refining while he was the sword master, so this all matched perfectly. Li Fan played it cool and invited them to come check out the goods. But right as they were about to leave, Dao Xuanzi got all greedy and said his friend already had a cultivation method. So why the fuck did he want to see the new method? Scared, Ko Hong just said he didn't want to go. Dao Xuanzi just rolled his eyes and followed Li Fan alone. In the treasure storage room, Li Fan was acting careful. He kept some red immortal mortal miasma floating around, letting Dao Xuanzi know he wasn't messing around. Dao Xuanzi freaked, recognizing the deadly stuff. Li Fan claimed it was just for protecting the family's heirlooms, then showed off the glowing scroll. The system announced the big prize, the 1,000 Mechanisms Jade Cosmos Treasured Tome, a nascent soul-level cultivation method, and nobody was using it yet. Dao Xuanzi just stared at it, stunned that Li Fan was actually telling the truth. Li Fan explained that back when Ku Hong was around, he'd only said it was a core formation method, since he didn't trust that guy not to do something crazy. Dao Xuanzi respected the move and swore he'd get Ko Hong to help with the boat repair. Li Fan laughed it off, saying sure, after everything was done, he'd hand over the method for real. Later that night, Dao Xuanzi went to talk to Ku Hong, telling him that the method was real and he'd seen it with his own eyes. Ko Hong got this dark, greedy look, thinking that Li Fan was just a mortal, and they could always steal the method by force. Yeah, our MC might have set up a deal, but you could already tell these immortal bros weren't planning to play fair. Man, Li Fan's life was never boring. Thank God Dao Xuanzi wasn't buying it. He told himself that yeah, Li Fan was a mortal, but he was also a descendant of the Taiyan sect, and nobody wanted to mess with those weirdos and their prophecy magic. He figured it was better to just help fix the boat and avoid getting his face melted by some secret trap. Plus, if they got the method by force and Li Fan revealed it was actually a nascent soul-level treasure, not some core formation, he would be in deep trouble. He doesn't want to fight Ku Hong again. Next day, Li Fan strolled in like a boss and handed the Taihang boat over for repairs. Ko Hong was absolutely geeking out over the thing, saying the refining and formation skills were way beyond anything he'd ever seen. The guy actually said his Tao of artifact refining would break new ground just messing with this boat. Here's the thing about cultivation. You blink, and a year flies by. Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi worked on that boat for almost an entire year. Finally, one day Li Fan rushed over. Guess what? The boat was glowing and ready to go. Ku Hong gave Li Fan the rundown. The boat's main power, its transformation, and its dust-cleansing systems were all fixed and running smooth. Defensive and offensive spells? Well, those got a patch job. Could handle the trip out, but you might not want to get in a fight with another cultivator. Li Fan didn't even care. As long as this baby could get him out of the immortal extinction great formation, he'd figure out the rest later. Ko Hong explained that the boat ran on spiritual energy, and you needed to control it with divine sense. 3 sizes, small like a bus, medium like a cruise ship, and maxed out an entire city, bro. They didn't have a lot of spirit stones for fuel, but it'd be enough to get Li Fan out in the medium size. Ko Hong wondered if Li Fan needed a cultivator to drive it, since mortals can't even use divine sense. But Li Fan was done playing it low-key. He straight up jumped onto a balcony and leapt off. The Tai Hang boat popped out of nowhere, and our boy landed right on the deck as it soared through the air, looking like an absolute legend. Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi practically tripped over themselves, amazed that a mortal could pilot this thing. Li Fan just laughed and said it was nothing, and that he owed it all to them for helping him finally see hope after 1,000 years stuck in this dump. Dao Xuanzi started to ask about the method they'd been promised, but Li Fan said it was ready and told them to come pick it up. Fast forward 3 days, Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi were back, cultivation method in hand, ready to bounce. Dao Xuanzi explained they didn't have many spirit stones left, and if they hung around this wasteland any longer, their powers would drain away. Ko Hong offered Li Fan a map he'd drawn from memory, since there weren't any fancy immortal USB sticks out here, showing the area near the exit. After a bit more chit-chat, the 2 immortals shot off into the sky, turning into streaks of light and leaving our boy alone at the manor. As they flew, Ko Hong admitted Li Fan was pretty awesome, but he felt bad the guy didn't have much time left. Even if Li Fan made it home, his lifespan was almost up. Rough life, right? Dao Xuanzi said it was the whole reason cultivators fought and backstabbed each other, to chase after long life. Ko Hong brought up the method Li Fan gave them. Just checking it wasn't a repeat or a fake, but Dao Xuanzi promised once he hit golden core, he'd pay his friend back, no problem. Then they started daring each other to blast through the fog, like a couple of maniacs. Meanwhile, Li Fan had his own plans. The dude climbed aboard the Tai Hang boat, determined to charge through the ruinous abyss and figure out what secrets lay beyond. He knew the fog only cleared every 14 years, but he was already super old, 71. By the time the fog opened again, he'd be pushing 85 and probably dead. He figured, screw it, why wait? He fired up the boat and dove straight into the thick white mist. At first, it was all spooky and unreal, just endless white in every direction. Then, the boat started shaking like crazy. Li Fan realized this was that astral wind layer Ko Hong talked about. The kind of place that would turn a regular person into ground beef in seconds. He was super lucky the boat's defenses held. After half an hour of pure stress, the shaking stopped. Suddenly, Li Fan was surrounded by this wild golden light. And then, bro, he got hit by the most insane vision ever. He saw himself getting a golden core, becoming an immortal emperor, breaking into the god realm, working his way up to God King, and then finally making it to the primeval god realm. But even there, he was just a low-level gatekeeper, starting all over from the bottom. Dude couldn't catch a break. Next thing, Li Fan snapped out of it, gasping for air. The boat was flying upwards, totally out of his control. He realized he'd just had his brain scrambled by some kind of illusory light layer, and the boat had autopiloted him to the next part, the inversion layer. He figured if he let the Tai Hang boat drive, he'd be fine, so he just kept pouring in power while the boat navigated the death traps. The boat zipped through the flowing fire layer, all burning hot, profound ice layer, so cold it could freeze your soul, thunderstorm layer, lightning city, and finally the darkness layer. Each one was supposed to be super dangerous, but the boat just glided past, dodging every threat like it was built for this. Finally, Li Fan reached the last layer, the darkness layer. All he had to do was pass through and he'd be free. He was ready to celebrate, but then out of nowhere, the darkness split open into a giant gaping mouth full of teeth, and that giant ate his boat in one bite. Li Fan yelled for the system, but the system cut him off. It couldn't protect him even with charging. And now? Simulation over? Bro. Li Fan jolted awake, drenched in sweat. He couldn't believe it. When Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi crossed the formation, they didn't see any nightmare monster in the darkness layer. So why did he? Was this some special trap that only triggered for mortals? He checked his stats, still stuck at mortal, age 20, even though his mind felt like it was 300, anchor charge inching up, Tai Hang boat still bound to his system. But hey, a new life meant new chances. Our boy locked in the Tai Hong boat and jumped right into life number 7. 4 years in, he went back to Qian Hong's tomb, using immortal mortal miasma to soften up the defenses. This time, he carefully drained power from the halting stele fragment and got a fat boost to his anchor charge, now up to 26%. All he had to do was repeat this a few times, and he'd unlock a second anchor point for even more crazy resets. The rest of the loot in the tomb? Totally useless to him now. He just sealed everything back up and left. But Li Fan couldn't resist the call of the abyss. A year later, he stood at the edge of the eastern ruinous abyss again, staring into the fog. He told himself he'd just take a peek, nothing risky. He knew his system was not charged up yet to be able to turn him back to the past. If he died right now, everything is gone, he would really be dead. But at the same time, the urge to gamble it all was strong. Why wait 15 years? He thought, when he could try his luck now? If he was careful and avoided that freaky mouth monster, maybe he could finally break through. Anyway, when he almost lost his mind and jumped, the pathway opened, and he saw the scary, bloody message again. The immortal path was dead. Looking at that, our boy was sweating bullets. He started freaking out a little, because just now, he had felt a ton of voices whispering in his head, basically begging him to dive straight into the abyss. If it hadn't been for those words, he would have just gone full crazy and walked right off the edge. Thank God, bro, or the story would end here. Because let's be real, this path to the immortal world was way too hard. Fast forward 15 years, our MC's new life was cruising along, and he was back with the fancy Tai Hong boat, zipping through the thunder and lightning like he owned the place. No real danger, just a lot of loud noises. He stopped right above the darkness layer, the place where things always went sideways. Some green specks of light floated up from the blackness below. Li Fan used them like a fancy flashlight, trying to spot that monster. But, of course, nothing showed up. The moment the light started fading, our guy decided to go for it, cranking the boat to full speed and shooting straight down. Guess what? Right on cue, the monster showed up, the same giant mouth, teeth everywhere, ready to chomp him. Li Fan realized that this creature really hated mortals. Maybe that's why no regular humans ever made it out alive. Our hero gripped the controls, yelled up and onward in his head, and swerved the boat back to the previous layer just in time. The monster couldn't follow him past the thunderstorm clouds. Apparently, that was the safe zone. He got a good look at the beast for the first time. A whale the size of a city, with just one glowing, creepy cyan eye staring him down. Li Fan thought, what the hell is that thing? That whale was so massive, and yet it always managed to find his tiny boat every single time. Thank God he had the system, so he could try as many times as he wanted, so he decided to keep rolling the dice. So, for the next 15 years, our MC did nothing but smash his head against this problem. He kept trying, over and over, to outmaneuver the whale. But the beast got faster, like it was learning every time. Li Fan could only dodge for a bit before chickening out and retreating. Time went by. Now he was at anchor year 35. Another shot at the abyss? Another chance to go full throttle. He waited until the day the white fog disappeared, because that was the only time when the whale seemed a bit slower to react. He figured that if he went fast enough, maybe he could make it before the monster noticed. He shot down, the illusion of another land getting closer and closer, but then, yup, the whale's terrifying cry echoed and it came after him again. Not enough time, bro. Li Fan called on his system and boom. The simulation ended right there. In system space, our guy didn't waste time. He just told the system to forget all the fancy options and just charge up faster. He noticed that his mental age limit wasn't going up anymore, he was just stuck at max. But hey, he still had almost 750 years to burn. That's a lot of chances to die in style. New life, new him. On his 8th round, at only 4 years in, he cracked open Qian Hong's tomb again. He sucked more power from the halting stele fragment, and the system told him he'd now charged up to a juicy 51%. Not bad at all. A year later, the fog over the abyss cleared. The system's charge was pushing 90%, but not quite there yet. For Li Fan, unless he hit 100%, it meant nothing. He just had to keep waiting. Over the years, he tried again and again, year 20, year 35, failing every time. But at least he was getting pretty slick at piloting that Tai Hong boat. Practice makes perfect, even when you're dying every few decades. By year 50, our MC was an old man with a beard so long he could probably trip over it. He knew his reflexes were shot, so instead of risking another suicide run, he decided to look for hints. He went to meet his 2 old friends. You know, the ones who blow up cities for fun, Dao Xuanzi and Ko Hong. They were already fighting in the sky, throwing around purple lightning and golden fire like total maniacs. Our boy actually felt a little nostalgic, hearing their usual arguments. Back at his fancy manor, he used the old trick, baiting the cultivators with a rare cultivation method so he could get them to show up for dinner. After a few drinks, he showed them a painting of the giant whale and asked if they'd ever seen something like that. Ku Hong nearly spat out his drink, insisting he'd never seen such a beast in the abyss. Dao Xuanzi looked thoughtful and said he'd read about it in ancient records. Apparently, there used to be a beast-taming sect that controlled freaky monsters instead of practicing normal cultivation. This giant whale was supposed to be one of their pets. Ku Hong then remembered the name, the realm-splitting whale. Li Fan leaned in, asking if they knew how to avoid it. Dao Xuanzi just shrugged, saying the beast had vanished from the world ages ago and no one knew how it worked. Our MC realized he'd have to figure this out himself. These two immortals were so useless, bro. After giving out the fake cultivation method and sending the other two away, our boy closed his eyes and let that life end. Time for the next round. Life 9. He went straight for the tomb, but this time the system didn't react at all. No more free charges. Tough luck. Back at the abyss, he tried the usual routine at anchor years 20, 35, and 50. Still no luck. When he finally hit 85, our hero was basically dust, too old for any more crazy tricks. He gave up control of the ship and just let it float down. Hands off, through all the deadly layers he'd mastered dodging so many times before. Astral wind, illusory light, inversion, flowing fire, profound ice, thunderstorm, and finally, the darkness layer. Inside the boat, the old man waited and watched, expecting the whale to show up and ruin his day again. But this time, nothing. No giant beast came for him. The boat kept going, and suddenly a golden light appeared below, like a doorway out. Li Fan realized this was his moment. He slammed the accelerator, the boat blazing toward the exit. And just then, the whale finally noticed and dove at him from above. He was shocked, but then it hit him. Bro, this monster couldn't see anything moving at a steady pace. As long as he didn't speed up or slow down, he was invisible to the beast. He started laughing like a total maniac. He had finally cracked the code. The final shackle holding him prisoner in this dead-end world was broken by him, and only him. The Tai Hang boat shot through the golden fissure, barely dodging the whale's bite, and escaped out into the unknown. The scenery outside turned unreal, all cosmic colors and swirling energy. The pressure was insane, making blood pour from his nose and eyes, but Li Fan didn't care. He was free. He looked back at the place he'd spent all those lives trapped in, but what he saw made his skin crawl. There weren't just one or two of those realm-splitting whales out there. There were hundreds, no, thousands, maybe even more. Each one was hollowing out a chunk of darkness in the glowing void of space. The land of immortal extinction, that old prison of a world, was drifting farther and farther away, lost among these monsters. Bro, our boy did it. He broke free. Those whales were so creepy I can't handle it. Now, after Li Fan finally broke through the ruinous abyss, then saw the real cultivation world with his own two eyes, he basically thought, well, dying right after that was totally worth it. Honestly, respect. Dude shed a tear and called it a win. The system popped up, telling him that simulation was over. New life started, the whole reset magic, blue light everywhere, Li Fan back to being a young dude. Our MC checked out his prize menu and straight up froze because he noticed something big. The halting stele fragment from last time was on the list. He was all, what the hell, how could I bring this broken thing with me? After thinking it over, he decided to grab the fragment and see if his wild guess was right. New life, new plan. Flash forward. Year 3. Our boy was already out at Qian Hong's tomb, but instead of blowing it open with miasma, he just took out the halting stele fragment he'd brought from the last round and waved it around. This was where things got interesting. The two stele fragments, one from the previous simulation, one inside the tomb, basically recognized each other and started to merge. Bro, it was like bringing two copies of a legendary Pokemon into the same game. The stele from Li Fan's inventory started to melt away, while the one in the tomb powered up like crazy. Our protagonist was grinning. He'd just confirmed that mystical artifacts wanted to be one of a kind, no fakes allowed. After that, he ordered his guys to blast the tomb open with immortal mortal miasma, the old school way. It took a while, but finally, Li Fan walked in and checked out the upgraded stele fragment. Still a little broken, but clearly stronger and shinier than before. He tried to see if the system could eat it up, but nope. He'd have to fix it up more before it would speed up for the system's recharge. So he just packed the new, improved stele into his Tai Hang boat, saving it for the big trip ahead. Time skip, anchor year 20. Li Fan was older now, and the system finally recharged. This time, he basically went full tyrant mode, cleaning out all the corrupt officials and greedy landlords, snatching up every scrap of gold and silver he could find. Bro was stacking treasure like a dragon, and he wasn't shy about it. Why? Because once he got to the cultivation world, he'd need something to spend. He even tried to grab as much grain as he could, but, you know, grain is life for the country. He couldn't just empty the silos. Of course, all the useless officials started whining, but Li Fan had a solution. He flexed his power by making his Tai Hang boat grow to epic size, floating it right above the imperial palace. People lost their minds. The regular folk dropped to their knees. The officials suddenly turned into his biggest fans, and everyone helped him finish loading the boat until it was packed to the brim. So, he became their god or what? With his loot and food sorted, it was finally go time. He jumped on the Tai Hang boat and soared back to the ruinous abyss. This time, he kept his cool, set the boat to autopilot at a steady speed. No more wild stunts. He knew the trick now. The trip through the void felt like forever, even though it only took a few hours in real time. Eventually, he broke through the barrier and bam, landed in the cultivation world. But, of course, nothing ever goes exactly as planned. Instead of some magical land with mountains and palaces like in his last life, our dude popped out right over a never-ending blue ocean. He pulled out his map, the one from Ku Hong, and surprise, surprise, there was no ocean marked anywhere. Classic bad luck. RMC just shook his head and figured he'd wing it, hoping his boat wouldn't run out of the power the poor before he found people. 7 days and nights later, still nothing but sea. 10 more days, and the boat was running on fumes. Just when he was about to say his goodbyes, he finally spotted another ship on the horizon. Except, get this, the thing was basically a wreck. Through his telescope, Li Fan saw the ship was already halfway sunk, with a giant hole in the side. Dozens of survivors were clinging to little rafts, trying not to die. Somebody in the water yelled out that they'd already called for an immortal master to save them and told everyone to chill. Our boy's heart skipped a beat. An immortal master is going to come here? Of course he needs to act fast. He hid his own superboat, jumped into the water, and started doing his best impression of a half-drowned nobody, flailing around and screaming for help. Gotta blend in, right? Then, things got wild. A voice echoed from the clouds, basically telling everyone to shut up. A blurry blue figure floated down. It was the immortal master, all mysterious and untouchable. The second he showed up, the whole world went silent. Li Fan tried to scream again but couldn't even open his mouth. Bro, the pressure was real. The immortal master just gestured lazily, and suddenly the broken ship floated up, fixed itself, and all the survivors, including Li Fan, teleported back onto the deck. Li Fan was impressed and maybe just a little jealous. The immortal master demanded to know who sent the signal. Some guy named Su Changyu fell to his knees and confessed it was him. The immortal master warned him that any messes after this weren't his problem. He'd never seen them, didn't know them. Got it? Changyu bowed even lower and said he understood. The blue guy just nodded, mumbled, and floated away like a ghost. Li Fan watched as the ship sailed again in a new direction. No one dared to talk, and the ride went on for hours. Eventually, they spotted a huge island up ahead, all glittering lights and hundreds of big ships docked at a fancy port. But for some reason, their ship didn't go to the main harbor. They slipped around the back of the island, creeping into a dark cave instead. Inside, a team of big, scary dudes in black robes came to meet them. These guys just herded everyone off the ship and into a huge hall. They told the survivors to eat up and get some rest. Someone would deal with them in the morning. Then the men in black dipped out, leaving everyone to their own business. The survivors started grumbling right away. Some rich kid whined about how his dad forced him to come to the great world to cultivate instead of living it up at home. Another guy bragged about being the son of a prefect and complained about how this place sucked. Yet another told them to quit crying, since all their families paid big money to send them here. Changyu shut everyone up, reminding them that if they wanted to become immortal masters and maybe return home rich and powerful, they'd better stop whining and start cultivating. Li Fan watched all this with a weird look. He realized these people were just like him, mortals sent from their own sad land of immortal extinction. The only difference? Unlike his old home, these guys already knew about the cultivation world, and apparently there was already a whole smuggling operation bringing mortals over. Our MC could barely believe it. He looked pretty shook. Indeed, the world is too big for him to understand all of it. Just then, a random man came up behind him, threw a hand on his shoulder, and asked if he was some kind of big shot from Dali or maybe a loaded merchant from the provinces. Looks like Lee Fan's cover was about to get tested, dude. But hell yeah. No way our MC is gonna mess up, right?